Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the ever-increasing and broadening vague definition and catch-all definitions of, or lack of definition really I should be saying, to supposedly identify white supremists. Hitler! Now, Western governments all over the world are moving again as one. So we see this is centrally scripted and organised and directed by the globalist cabal. But moving as one have decided that white supremacy is the biggest threat to the West going at the moment. Now, that's an absolutely fantastic and equally absurd and ridiculous assertion to make. So when white people get up and say, well, we want the rule of law implemented and applied equally, that is, everyone is equal under the law. And we want due legal process so that people that the government don't like have exactly the same legal rights in court as anyone else does. We want those sort of things, but we want clean and fair elections. We want accountable government. We don't want mass migration of black and brown peasants and criminals. We want a migration of suitably skilled people that speak our language and so on. So now, when you do that, there's nothing radical or supremacist or anything in any of that. It's quite reasonable, quite sensible. But it just so happens it goes against the globalist project. So we need to understand that white supremacy, Nazi, fascist, all that sort of stuff is code for, hey, these guys are questioning or opposing the globalist project. So in order to make Western societies, in effect, ungovernable, the rule of law has gone. So radical activists can go outside the homes of the Supreme Court justices in the United States, and there's not one arrest, a placard waving and screaming and shouting outside the homes of the Supreme Court justices, with obviously the sole purpose of or intent of intimidating and threatening and so on. Not one arrest. No one's gone to prison for that. The organisers haven't. Now, given how much the FBI is supposed to be watching misbehaviour and be watching the accounts of the social media accounts and reading texts and just think January 6th and all that, and then have a look at these people were able to organise these protests, and quite a few people were turning up. It's not like there's one person there or something. So organise these protests, have their posters and their banners printed, have their bullhorns going, have their catering and food and water and so on being brought. They're able to have all of that, and somehow magically the FBI just doesn't notice it. Antifa, BLM, somehow the authorities just aren't there. They just don't know. But if there's a couple of Christians standing anywhere near an abortion clinic, then that's suddenly 12 FBI agents, armed FBI agents with body armor can raid that person who's not a threat to anybody, can raid that person's house and drag them away, even though they've been in touch with that person's lawyer, and all they have to do is telephone the lawyer and say, can you ask your client to come into police station X at location so and so, we'd like to interview them. That's all they have to do. But instead there's the big dramatic guns pointing, freeze, don't move, hands behind the back, and cuffing, and the whole dramatic thing. They can do that. So out of the hundreds of Antifa people that were thousands, many thousands, tens of thousands Antifa people, if even a handful got arrested and prosecuted, I'd be surprised. Certainly, if the ones that do get arrested, all of them are being bailed out on zero bail or on some $50 or some nominal fee, then they just walk out. And that's the end. There's no follow-up. There's no chasing them. But again, all that could have been stopped. The authorities would have been able to stop it. But there's a group of white people were meeting to meet about concern over a particular election in a certain area, and the FBI were able to monitor the whole thing and swoop in and grab these people. Now, one of the concerning things about some of the whistleblower information coming out of, for example, the United States, is where the FBI quite brazenly talks about not only infiltration and putting agents provocateurs in the middle of some of these groups, but also creating what they call tripwire incidents. So they want to arrest these people on some bullshit charge. So they set up a scenario and then create what they call a tripwire. So the unwitting alleged white supremacist could just be a Christian or something, that happens to trip over the wire that they've set up, the trap they've set up. It's entrapment. And then bingo, they've got it. That's it. There was an attempt to commit genocide by a white supremacist who was Hitler. But your FBI was on the spot. So these tripwire instances. So clearly, anyone who has questions about globalization or its effects is a white supremacist, and that's what they're targeting. It's nothing about white supremacy. That's nonsense. But that's what it is. Now, the FBI, for example, in Australia, people that queried the outrageous lockdowns, which were not legal and never were legal, use of arbitrary emergency powers and things like that. The police response to those that complained about it, whether it be online or going out and demonstrating, the response was brutal, including bringing out guns and shooting rubber bullets at these people. But the Antifa or the Black Lives Matter or race activists getting out on the street and talking about the most outrageous things. Let's burn the buildings down, let's kill the white people. None of them were arrested. So we just have to accept that this is if you question the globalist project, you are a threat to the globalist project. The only threats to the globalist project are its biggest losers, which are white people in the West. So that's the set piece structure of it all. Now, in terms of this broadening net of what's the definition of a white supremacist, it is very, very broad, and the bar is set very low. And it's if you look at the way the globalist sort of cabal in all their machinations, this is very much their thing. So if you go into, say, the divorce courts and all that sort of stuff, and you see, and even things like rape courts and the like, you see typically the bar is set quite low for the accuser, and certainly in the divorce courts, if she says he's a child abuser, that's it. It is fact. Do you have any evidence? Nah. Do you have any witnesses? Nah. When did this child abuse happen? I don't know. Well, where did it happen? I can't remember. So we're talking like Christine Blasey Ford and the ridiculous accusations against Justice Kavanaugh in the United States. Well, that doesn't matter if you don't know anything. You've got no proof. You've got no evidence. You've got no witnesses. You don't know where and when and how and everything. The court will accept that as fact. Now, Mr. Billy Bob Smith, you need to prove it didn't happen. So they just reverse the burden of proof. So this is also a part of the thing when they go after white people for opposing globalization or questioning it, or questioning any central sort of tenets of it, is the change in the burden of proof, or the reversal of the burden of proof. Prove you're not a white terrorist supremacist. Prove that you're not Hitler. And this is the approach they take. Now, this has been going on for like this idea of looking at the behavior of people and saying, well, this behavior could lead to somebody to go to the next level of dissent, the next level of questioning the globalist project. So can we identify the very original sort of situation that sets people off on this course of questioning the globalist project? We control all the media, we control education, we control institutions. So what else can we take control of that will prevent anybody questioning in any way the globalist project? So that's where they're sort of coming from here. Now, if you look at, say, the communist system in the Soviet Union, the ideological communists thought, well, we've already found the most efficient, fairest social system ever known in the history of humankind. So it's the best ever. There is nothing better. Nothing could be better. Nothing ever will be better. This is the best way of doing it. So anyone that questions it or isn't happy with it or has doubts about it, they must be some sort of terrorist, mental defective terrorist person. They must be, because we've got the best system ever. So they must be mentally defective terrorists. And they need to be put in prison or threatened and neutralized somehow. So that was the Soviet communist way of going about things. And coming back to this tripwire that the FBI was talking about, this is very much a Soviet thing. So they would purposefully leave disapproved of books in libraries such as Shakespeare or whatever. And then they would, or Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, and so that they would leave these sort of books there to see who would take them out. Now, if you took those books out, or even if you went into the library and read them, while sitting in the library, then they would say, well, that's it. That person is an enemy of the people. An enemy of the people. They are a subversive element. They are a counter-revolutionary, because the revolutionary has brought socialist perfection to society, and this person is seeking to counter that revolution. They are evil. They are fucking evil. So we have the right to engage in arbitrary arrest and have kangaroo courts where they have to prove very conclusively, under a crushing burden of proof, they have to prove that they're not counter-revolutionaries or somehow terrorists against the system. Now, if you sort of look at which are available now online with subtitles and so on, if you look at some of these kangaroo courts during the Soviet era, they pretended to make it all legitimate, the judge sitting there and all that sort of thing, but it's all bullshit. What they ended up doing was that they would take the person in, they would beat them up and slap them around, try and get a confession. If that didn't work, they would, or even if it did, it didn't matter, they would manage to get something out of them. I mean, the beatings were quite severe, so most people are going to crack under that. Some people had all their teeth knocked out. So they were, but let's say that, they get their day in court. They want to give it this veneer of legitimacy. A judge decided you were guilty and that sort of stuff. So they've got the person in court, and they put them under this crushing burden of proof, and they use definitions. Say, well, the definition of someone who reads Shakespeare is that you are a counter-revolutionary. So, I mean, it not might you be or could you be, prove that you're not. You are. If you read Shakespeare, you are a counter-revolutionary. You are against the people. You're an enemy of the people. So all the court needs to do is prove that you did read Shakespeare, which you've admitted yourself. You are therefore a counter-revolutionary, and we can therefore put you in prison or take you out back and shoot you. So this is the same technique that we're seeing happening all across the West now. This maniacal desire to anyone that questions globalization is an enemy of globalization. If you're an enemy of globalization, then you must be earmarked for termination. Whether it's being sort of unpersoned, no bank account, no job, no, you can't even have a shed. Whether you're unpersoned or whether you're put in prison is almost academic. The unpersoning is probably good enough, but and that serves as a warning to others, and so on and so forth. So I'm seeing the same, in my view, at least the same thing going on in the West today. Now, to do this, they have to, the globalists and their flunkies and all across the Western government and public services and the courts and so on, they have to suspend, the rule of law can't be applied equally, because then all the Antifa people would be in prison, or the people that were, the climate change protesters to shut down the cities, and they'd be in prison. So they don't want that, because those people are in support of the globalist project, either by creating, social mayhem or reducing confidence in the system and the process, so that people will accept its replacement by anything else, because hell, it's not working. So why don't we try something different? That type, which is again very, very much part of the globalist shtick. But if you oppose globalization, you are against the climate change protests, you're against BLM, you're against Antifa, you're against lockdowns, these sort of things, then you are an enemy of the people. That's the sort of the neo definition, if you will, following on from that Soviet thing. Now we're even seeing today in the West that the British government, as a case in point, are doing that same thing. Anything that smacks of Englishness or of pride in England or pride in the culture or the history, reading Shakespeare, for example, that means you're proud of English history and tradition and culture. Now, if you're proud of that, then that means you may defend England's interests against the globalists. You are therefore a white supremacist. That's the tag they're giving. I mean, whether they use the Soviet thing of counter-revolutionary enemy of the people, doesn't matter. You're going to be called a name: Nazi, fascist, white supremacist. They just need a name that makes it sound like, oh, that's a bad person. White supremacist. Oh, what a bad person. Yeah, and there are Nazis. Whoa, holy fuck. And then there are fascists. Oh, I'm gagging. Oh, no, the wickedness of it all. So that's the way they're going about this, and the tripwires, as the FBI document said, is also being done ideologically. If you read Shakespeare, you are a white supremacist. If you're a white supremacist, you are against globalization. If you're against globalization, we must terminate you somehow. And so then we have people watching you all the time, and who you associate with and who you meet, or other material you may read, or that sort of thing. So it's a way of Western governments picking and selecting and identifying the people most likely to be disillusioned with or disagree with or question globalization. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to do. Who will not agree with globalization, and who? And the biggest losers of globalization are white working class and middle class people. So you're more likely to find dissent there. So that they're already, that's the white supremacy thing. The biggest losers of globalization is this group of people. So the dissent is most likely to come from there. I mean, duh. And then they can go, well, who are the brighter people here? Well, this person's capable of organizing. This person's good at doing, this person's good at writing books, so this person's writing pamphlets or doing videos, for that matter. So they're able to identify the troublemakers as they would see it. And then the troublemaker, the definition of troublemaker is, are you completely for or against the globalization project, or are you irrelevant? For example, black riots, riots of black people, they don't care. It's because that's not a threat to globalization. I mean, they don't like it. It's a bit untidy and all that sort of stuff. But those people will be bought off with a few trinkets. And you can just send agitators in the middle and say, you know why you guys are unhappy and why your standard of living is funny? It's because those damn white fascist Nazi devils. Yeah, it's them. It's not the globalists sending your jobs offshore. It's not the globalists increasing the cost of living so that you can't afford to scratch your ass around. No, it's not them. It's those damn white devils. Look, see, look, just down there. It's them. They did it. And the agitators and the simple-minded folks amongst those communities go, yeah, that's right, yeah. And so they're able to control the architecture of dissent. But white people are hard to control, much harder to control. There's too much discernment, too much analysis, too much, hey, that doesn't add up. Hey, I don't believe that. That's bullshit. White people are capable of that level of analysis and therefore are more dangerous. And I'll just talk a little bit more about people from Hungary and Poland who got out, or Czechoslovakia rather, and Poland and Hungary who got out in the 1950s and 1960s. They were talking about, they were old enough to remember when the Soviets, communists, turned up in Eastern Europe, and how they used "We Are Your Friends" to flush out people that might be difficult or dangerous. Remember, there's no one more difficult than a bright person who can't be deluded where the propaganda won't work. They're not per se a threat, but you can't win them over, but they're bright enough where they could win over other people. If they do have a dissenting position, the chances are they can bring other people with them, and that person is dangerous. A mindless moron or fool can have any opinion. No one gives a fuck. Slap them around a bit and that's it. They're under control again. But a person with the capacity for independent thought, they are a threat. They are a threat to illegitimate power, not a threat to legitimate power. They're never a threat to legitimate power, but they are a threat to illegitimate power. And that's what globalization is, and all the mechanisms and the forcing of the globalization project. It's all using power that is not legitimate. If you're suspending the rule of law and due legal process, then your power is not legitimate. If you're affecting the outcome of elections through control of media or anything like that, you are not legitimate. And so the illegitimacy of the globalization project is what's driving them to these things of white supremacists. And that's so when the Soviets came into Eastern Europe, so these people tell me, I don't doubt it, they would have town hall meetings. We want your input, we want your opinion, we want to create this great society. So let's all meet in the town hall and everyone can have their say, and we're here to listen. And so, some people got sucked into that. And so they go, well, I believe we should have, I believe this. So they'd make a note of the brighter people, the more persuasive speakers, the people who are capable of independent thought. And, okay, well, thank you, Sergey, for your contribution there. And then everybody went home, lots of backslapping and that sort of thing. And then the secret police would, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, would arrive at Sergey's place and drag him off, and no one would ever see him again. What was his crime? Well, he committed no crime. He was a potential threat to the communist system, and that's what it was. And that's what this white supremacy is all about. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.